There is a quiet corner of your mind that most people rarely enter. It is a space where your heartbeat feels louder than the world outside, where every thought hums with unspoken meaning, where the shadows of your experiences linger softly on the walls. You know it well, even if you rarely speak its name. It is the psychology of silence, the instinct to retreat when the ache of hurt presses too heavily against your chest. Tonight, as the world moves on outside your window, lights flickering in distant apartments, the occasional car sighing down the street, you find yourself in that corner, and it feels like home. It is not a cold or lonely home, but a careful, tender refuge. Here you are allowed to breathe, to unfold the weight of your feelings without explanation, without apology, without the relentless expectation of engagement. The first time you noticed it, your retreat, it may have felt like a flaw. Perhaps it came after a harsh word, a misunderstanding, a betrayal subtle or acute. Maybe it was the quiet ache of rejection, or the storm of disappointment when someone you trusted didn't meet the invisible standard you had carried for them. The world asked for your attention, your reaction, your explanation, but your mind whispered, "Not now." And so, you withdrew, not to punish, not to control, but to preserve the delicate ecosystem of your inner world. Psychologists have a name for this behavior. It is a protective mechanism, rooted deeply in the architecture of the human brain. The amygdala, the small almond-shaped cluster that governs our threat responses, can ignite in the face of emotional pain as vividly as it does to physical danger. When you feel hurt, the brain interprets it as a signal that your emotional safety is at risk. The natural response, to pull away to seek solitude, is your mind's way of creating a buffer between yourself and perceived harm. It is not a rejection of the world, but rather a declaration of care for your fragile interior. As you sit alone, perhaps on the edge of a bed or curled on a worn couch, your mind begins its quiet assessment. The hippocampus, that archivist of memory, recalls the moments that shaped your belief about withdrawal. The times when speaking up brought further pain, when vulnerability was met with indifference, when connection itself felt like a gamble. These neural pathways, strengthened by repetition, create a pattern: hurt, retreat, restore. And yet, there is an artfulness in this withdrawal, a subtle choreography that balances preservation with longing. For beneath the silence is a desire, sometimes muted, sometimes almost imperceptible, to re-engage when the self feels intact enough to withstand the world. It is easy to misread this retreat as coldness, as aloofness, as an unwillingness to care. Others may knock on the door of your quiet room, asking why you have gone away, why your responses have thinned, why your laughter is reserved. They may not understand that the very act of stepping back is an act of profound self-care. When you pull away, you are not closing yourself off from humanity. You are giving your nervous system space to regulate, to integrate, to process the tidal wave of sensations that accompany hurt. You are practicing a quiet, embodied wisdom that many spend a lifetime learning. Imagine your nervous system as a sea, ever-moving, sensitive to shifts in the environment. Hurt acts as a sudden gust, stirring currents you cannot yet navigate. If you attempt to push forward before the waves settle, the risk of capsizing is high. But if you allow the water to calm, if you float in the safe harbor of your own attention, you find balance. Your heart rate steadies, your breathing deepens, your thoughts acquire clarity. This is the physiology of retreat, the psychology of silence, a tender survival strategy that allows re-emergence stronger, more aware, more capable of connection. There is a poetic rhythm to this process, a story that unfolds quietly, unnoticed by the rush of the external world. You may notice yourself lingering on memories, touching the edges of old pain like tracing lines in sand, gentle and deliberate. Perhaps you replay conversations in your mind, not to punish yourself or the other person, but to understand, to map the emotional terrain so future encounters feel less treacherous. This reflective practice, often unconscious, strengthens the prefrontal cortex, the seat of decision-making, empathy, and self-regulation, making it easier to approach relationships with measured openness rather than reactive defensiveness. Sometimes, in this space, tears emerge without effort, unbidden and yet profoundly cleansing. The act of crying is not a weakness but a neurochemical release. Oxytocin and endorphins flood the system, calming the stress response and mending the invisible tears in your emotional fabric. If you have been someone who fears their own vulnerability, this may feel startling. The body is quietly performing acts of repair, showing you that hurt need not harden you, that silence need not equate to isolation. In the stillness, you witness your own resilience. And there is wonder in noticing the small gestures that accompany retreat. The way your fingers trace the rim of a mug, the way your gaze lingers on the golden light filtering through the window, the way your breathing deepens without conscious effort. These moments are microscopic acts of self-soothing, each a quiet affirmation of worth, each a soft reassurance that the world is not all danger and disappointment. You are allowed this, the space to exist, to recover, to feel without performance. Psychologists also note that this tendency to withdraw can be tied to attachment patterns formed in childhood. If your early environment was unpredictable, if emotional attunement was inconsistent, the strategy of retreat becomes a learned language of safety. Pulling away when hurt is a message your nervous system has memorized. Protect yourself first, engage later. Recognizing this pattern is not about self-blame. It is about curiosity, a gentle illumination of why your instincts feel urgent, why your boundaries sometimes feel like invisible walls. And so, as you inhabit your silence, there is an invitation to meet yourself with compassion. Notice the tension in your shoulders, the subtle contraction of your chest. Let awareness settle like warm light across the contours of your body. Listen to the rhythm of your heartbeat. Watch the way thoughts arrive and depart without judgment. This is the practice of self-awareness, the art of emotional literacy. Naming what you feel, observing how it manifests, and honoring it without attempting immediate correction. Perhaps, as the hours deepen and the night stretches its velvety cloak across the sky, you reflect on your relational history. Times when withdrawal prevented escalation, when retreat allowed you to regain composure and speak with clarity. Times when silence turned into misunderstanding, when others interpreted your care for self as indifference. Both are true. Both are pieces of your narrative. Both can coexist without shame. The mind is rarely simple, the heart rarely linear, and the beauty lies in embracing this complexity. Imagine a future interaction. You have been hurt, as before, but this time, you recognize the initial instinct to retreat and meet it with gentle awareness. You whisper to yourself, "It is okay to step back. It is also okay to return when ready." You notice the physiological cues, a flutter in the chest, the urge to close off, and treat them as signals rather than verdicts. You imagine extending your hand to connection when your system has regulated, knowing that intimacy is not a race but a rhythm, that timing and readiness matter. Science offers more reassurance. Studies in psychoneuroimmunology reveal that allowing emotional processing in safe solitude reduces long-term stress, strengthens immune function, and supports cognitive flexibility. The act of retreat, once seen as avoidance, is in fact a sophisticated interplay of mind and body designed for longevity and resilience. Every hour spent in conscious reflection, every breath taken to steady the nervous system, is a subtle investment in your capacity to love, to empathize, to engage authentically. And yet, there is also a story of courage in silence. It takes bravery to face hurt without distraction, to witness pain without immediate action, to inhabit your own mind fully when external validation is absent. You are learning a new kind of intimacy with yourself. Each step inward, each pause, each moment of noticing, is a quiet revolution, a reclamation of agency over your emotional landscape. You are training your mind to respond with choice rather than reflex, to approach connection with clarity rather than compulsion. Perhaps in this silence, you begin to notice patterns beyond yourself. You see the ways others withdraw, the subtle dance of approach and retreat that governs relationships. You realize that pulling away when hurt is a shared language, a universal response, not a personal failing. And in that recognition, compassion blooms. You see yourself mirrored in the behaviors of others, and suddenly the world feels less alien, less judgmental, more interconnected. The psychology of silence is not a wall but a bridge. A bridge that, once crossed, allows both self-protection and tender engagement. As the night deepens, your mind drifts to the quiet lessons that hurt imparts. Empathy grows from experiencing the ache of vulnerability. Patience develops when you learn that feelings cannot always be rushed. Self-awareness blossoms when you observe the subtle cues of your nervous system, when you notice the interplay of thought, sensation, and emotion. Hurt, once a feared teacher, becomes a guide, a soft, persistent whisper showing you the contours of your own interior landscape. There is magic in this awareness. The gentle understanding that your instinct to pull away is neither shameful nor wrong. That retreat is not rejection. That silence, when wielded with consciousness, is a tool of healing. That you are learning the delicate alchemy of self-preservation and relational engagement. Each instance of withdrawal is a lesson in rhythm, a meditation in presence, a rehearsal in attunement. And as dawn approaches, softening the night with blushes of pink and gold, You realize that retreat is not absence. It is preparation. Not abandonment. It is readiness. You rise from your quiet corner with an intimate knowledge of your own mind. You notice the lingering tension has softened. The air feels lighter. Thoughts are clearer, less entangled. And when the world resumes its hum, the phone chimes, the door opens, the voices call. You are neither distant nor reactive. You are regulated, self-aware, and resilient. You carry the psychology of silence as a companion, a guide, a soft guardian of your emotional well-being. And perhaps most importantly, you understand this. Pulling away when you're hurt does not diminish your capacity for love. It amplifies it. It teaches you boundaries, attunement, empathy, and patience. It shows you that connection is most authentic when entered from wholeness rather than fracture, from presence rather than desperation. Your silence becomes a sanctuary, your reflection a teacher, your awareness a gentle revolution in the way you relate to yourself and others. And in this knowledge, there is peace.